the Family Service Center. It's been around for a really long time, over 100 years. We're going to have some fun, so feel free to share this out. Let me know what you have going on today. Here we go. Good morning. This is Kickstart. My name is Gardy. It is 9:10 on a Friday right here in Galveston County. I'm excited to have some guests in studio. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into everything that they have going on.
Hey, my name is Rudolph Royon. I'm the director of the Fatherhood Program at Family Service Center, and I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist.
And I'm Shanice Blair, the Fatherhood Program Community Outreach and Engagement Specialist.
All right, so welcome to KHEA Radio. How y'all doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Very well.
So the first thing I think we wanted to talk about was the Fatherhood Program that y'all have going on. So if somebody hasn't heard of it before, specifically, what does the Fatherhood Program do and offer?
Sure, yeah. Well, we offer a couple services. Both are no cost, and they're free to anybody who lives in Galveston County who's a father who's got a child 0 to 17. And so we offer two things. The first is this Fatherhood Program parenting class called 24/7 Dad. It's like a free class that we offer for dads who are looking to sharpen their skills and kind of just become better parents. And the other thing we offer is also just free therapy for fathers and father figures. If they're seeking counseling, we can offer that at no cost, and that includes couples work and individual stuff and family stuff.
So I guess like historically, is that something that fathers have been like seeking, like wanting that, like, oh, I need help, or I need counseling?
Yeah, well, like social services generally tends to be kind of geared toward women, and so a lot of the offerings kind of understandably are kind of geared toward moms. And so this fatherhood initiative is kind of part of a nationwide trend trying to get dads more involved in taking care of their kids and being involved with their kids, because we know from the research that father involvement is just vital across the board. If you've got a dad who's involved, the outcome for those kids is incredibly positive. And so that's kind of what we're trying to push, is just getting dads more involved with their kids.
So if somebody wants to find out more information or get involved or seek those services, what do they do?
Well, they can check us out online at fscgal.org, which is just like our website. So you can go there. You can give us a call at 409-762-8636. Just ask for the Fatherhood Program, and they'll get put in touch with us, and we'll help them out from there.
All right. So, Shanice, how long has the agency been around? Family Service Center, how long have they been doing what they do?
108 years we've been in Galveston County.
How long have you been working with Family Service Center?
1 year in January.
Yeah, so 1 year in January, starting like in the middle of an interesting time. I know that a lot of people were talking about the importance of family services, stuff like this, like social services, I guess is the right way to say it, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, in the pandemic, we've seen people kind of pull back a lot from seeking services, which is unfortunate because this time is kind of been marked by a lot of need, a lot of stress going on, so a lot of mental health impacts, just depression and anxiety, just kind of across the board. Everybody's been feeling it because of the pandemic and the consequences of the pandemic. And so it's kind of a high need time, but for whatever reason, people are kind of shrinking away. And so that's kind of part of why we're here. We want to help promote that and put the word out that, like, if you're struggling or you need help, or if you just want to get a little bit better at being a parent or being a person, come talk to us and we'll help you out.
Okay, so where are these services offered? Is this something where the resources like online, or is it physical locations?
Yeah, well, we have two locations. So we're on the island in Galveston. We're also on the mainland. We have a Texas City office. And so our 24/7 Dad program, we actually offer virtually. And so people can just join from their house if they want. They can just be hanging out and join us in a Zoom call. And we do that once a week for an hour. And so they can either come in and get services in person, or we can figure out a way to do it, either over telephone or virtually with a Zoom call.
Okay. Rudolph, how long have you been at Family Service Center?
4 years.
For 4 years. So you were there at the start of the program,
Yeah.
the Fatherhood Program as well?
Yeah, I was there for a year before we got the program, and so I was working primarily as a school-based therapist with middle school kids, and then we got the program, and I took that over, and so I've been running that program basically since that time, since we've had the grant.
Okay. How have you seen things change, I guess, pre-2020 to now? How have things changed, I guess, with Family Service Center and then just in the community in general?
I think for us, a lot of it was just pivoting to being able to offer services that weren't in person. That was kind of our primary modality, was like seeing people in person. But with the pandemic and the restrictions, we had to figure out, like, okay, how do we help people? How do we do mental health work in a situation where people can't come in? And so basically we got all up to date on telehealth stuff and kind of got the equipment and the tech to be able to do that, like ethically and effectively. And so we had a huge pivot, and we saw an enormous number of people virtually. And one of the wonderful things about that is that it was kind of a problem that had to be solved in the moment. And then we discovered that it's actually a resource that's incredibly valuable outside of a pandemic too, because there's a lot of people who just, I work a lot with dads, and dads just tend to be working a lot, right? And so they don't have time on a Tuesday at 1 p.m. to come in and see me necessarily, but they can log on at 7 p.m. when they get home and do a little session that way. And so it just really increases the flexibility that we have.
Shanice, you mentioned that you've been here for about a year. Mm-hmm. How did you end up in this line of work?
I've worked in Galveston in the community in different areas, mainly in case management, at just various different agencies. And so I know a lot about the community and just have worked with a lot of community members in Galveston. And so because I've worked with so many people, and I know a lot of the resources that are there or that aren't there for the people in need. So that's my whole role. Family Service Center wanted me to come on and use my skills with the community and what I know and how I've worked with so many different people to see how I could help spread the word about mental health and how you can just better improve yourself.
Are you from Galveston? Are you from the area?
No, I'm not. I'm actually lived here 5 years in January. I'm originally from Iowa, though.
From Iowa.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
The first thing that came to mind was wrestling. I know I was talking to Rudolph before. I was like, isn't that like a wrestling state? Okay,
yeah. So proud. Yeah. Go Hawks. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. If you're just joining us, this is KHEA Radio. We're talking to Family Service Center about the Fatherhood Program and some of the other programs that they have and how it benefits the community in Galveston County. So how many people do you think are just not even aware that programs like this exist that are free to them to access?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's an awareness issue. I think a lot of it also, especially for us in the Fatherhood Program, is that fathers are just not particularly likely to seek counseling or attend a parenting class. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is just overcome that barrier. And I think a lot of it has to do with kind of a mental health stigma. And some of it's also tied up, I think, with just the nature of masculinity. We're kind of taught as men, like, you don't seek help. If you're going to therapy, it must mean that you're crazy. And so we're kind of constantly trying to break down those barriers, because really what mental health is about, I think people think about it sometimes as kind of an on-off switch, like you're crazy or you're fine. But the truth is that mental health is a spectrum, and everybody is suffering from mental health symptoms at any given time, right? And the question is, like, do you qualify for an official diagnosis like depression or not? I'm less interested in that than I am, like, everybody's got problems in their life that they're trying to overcome and doing their best. And what therapy is really about is kind of coming in and seeing yourself in a mirror, seeing yourself clearly. And so me as a therapist, it's not my job to tell people what they should do. It's about people doing what they should do and really like kind of evaluating where they're at and whether the approach that they're taking to life is the right one, right? And so it's not, I don't like give people what values they should care about or kind of what priorities they should have. That's all about the individual. I'm just an expert at helping people accomplish those things that they want. And the 24/7 Dad program is really specifically focused on fatherhood. And I find that a lot of times, like, everybody I interact with wants to be a great dad, right? And or at the very least cares about their children. And being a great parent is really a set of skills that you can learn. I feel like that's something that not everybody knows. Like, everybody, the way people tend to parent is like, okay, this is what my parents did, so I'm going to kind of do a version of that. Like, I didn't like this, and so I'm not going to do that part. But they're also sometimes unclear, like, okay, how do I really discipline my kids effectively? Should I use corporal punishment? How should I get them to do what I want, basically? And all those things, like, there's a lot of research on that stuff, and we know a lot about, like, what you can do as a parent and where the outcomes are improved. And so part of what we offer is kind of expert knowledge to dads about, like, okay, this is something you're doing that's really helpful, and keep focusing on that. And this other thing that you're worried about, like, we know that that's probably less of a big deal. And so I feel like really what we offer dads through 24/7 Dad program is the confidence to move ahead. Most dads are usually already have a lot of great ideas about what to do. And so what we're really doing is just kind of helping them feel effective and competent and confident. And that way, when they're walking into parenting situations, they feel prepared for it. And so I don't feel like it's something where, the dads we're seeing have no idea what to do, and we have to, like, build them up brick by brick. Like, they're already doing a great job most of the time and have a lot of great stuff going on. And we're kind of operating as coaches and kind of expertise, like advisors, kind of helping them know, like, okay, here's some of the stuff you're doing that's really working, and we know from the research that this helps, and some of this other approach might not be the best, and here's kind of why. But ultimately, it's up to the dads themselves to kind of make their own decisions.
So earlier you mentioned that you don't give people morals or tell them what to do. You kind of bring it out and help them break walls down to make decisions. That's correct?
Yeah.
Is it difficult sometimes if you know the right decision? It's like, well, this makes sense, but you got to leave your personal opinion out of it. Is that difficult?
Yeah, I mean, everybody comes from a different background, right? Some people have like specific spiritual beliefs, or they come from a certain culture that has specific values. And so everybody is, as far as how they are as a parent, is an amalgamation of all these different influences of what they have. And sometimes those influences speak against each other. And so we have to figure out, like, well, what do you do in that situation, right? If your culture is telling you this, or your religious faith is telling you this, it's not our job to tell you what your faith should be or what your values should be exactly, but we know that there's things that are good for kids and good for men, and that's the stuff that we're pushing, and that stuff is all based on research.
Okay, so whenever it comes to the Fatherhood Program, has it been around enough to like see like some data, people that have gone through it, or some success stories or anything, testimonials?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do surveys with all our dads after they complete the program, and so they're kind of constantly telling us kind of what they like and don't like. In therapy, obviously, I'm working with people pretty closely, and I get to hear a lot about how their lives are changing over the time that they're seeing me. And so, we're still a pretty small program. So we do collect data, but also the Fatherhood Program generally, and 24/7 Dad is like a statewide initiative. So there's other agencies in other parts of the state that are doing the same thing. And so the data is overwhelmingly positive. The guys who do it, I mean, everybody, I feel like once we get somebody in the room and we kind of do a little work, they end up loving it, and they come back and they tell people about it. The challenging thing is just getting somebody who has no particular inclination to, do a parenting class or do therapy, getting them over the hump. But once they're involved, dads tend to really love it, and especially in the group, there's just something about being with a group of guys. You're talking about the same stuff. Everybody's sharing what's going on in their life. It's incredibly positive, and we're just like building on the strengths that people have. It's not about picking out like, okay, what are your weak, picking out, okay, you're doing this wrong or anything like that. It's really about what are you already good at, and how are we going to build that up so you're going to have the most positive possible impact on both yourself and your child.
What's the best way to get someone over that hump, to get them in a class? Because I mean, it's hard to talk someone in, and I know this, I have 3 kids. If they don't want to do something, if I don't want to do something, someone trying to talk you into doing it, sometimes it just makes it worse.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. I mean, whenever there's any kind of a sense of like that you have to do something, I think there's a natural instinct of people to put up their defenses.
Right.
Like, oh, you
I was
want
like, break me
that?
down
Well,
with the therapy right now. Why am I the way I am? Why do I?
Yeah. I think as far as like our getting clients, it's usually just about meeting the guy and having a conversation. And I think for men, a lot of it's, I mean, maybe just everybody, but I think men in particular, like when you meet somebody and you get a good vibe from them and you feel like, okay, I could talk to this person for a while, that's usually the way to get people over the hump. But if they have like no connection with the agency and have never met any of us, that's a different story. It's like, well, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? Who are these people? What are their agendas? Right. And so all those questions are swirling. But once you get to meet somebody and have a conversation, usually those barriers come down once they realize what your intentions are and what you're offering.
Shanice, what you got?
And I was just going to say, because I think that's something that keeps people from going to therapy, is fearing that they're going to be judged because of their lived experiences, who they are, their beliefs in something. So they'll go in and they'll be like, what if this therapist judges me and thinks I'm a bad person? The therapist isn't there to judge you. They're there to be with you and respect your lived experiences so that you can continue living. And I feel like that's something that keeps people from going to therapy, is that they just don't feel it's a space for them, but it literally is a space for you. The therapist is working with you to build that space for you so that you can find your best self. And
I guess like a therapy session, generally, how does that go? I've never experienced that. I've seen stuff on TV or movies, or people talk about it more, but like how does something like that go?
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, people come in and then you just start having a conversation, and it's guided by the client. And so whatever it is that they're struggling with, whatever it is they're dealing with, that becomes the topic. So you kind of set some goals, right? Like maybe somebody's thinking like, I should really lose some weight, but also I've got this, relationship with my partner that kind of is on the rocks. It kind of keeps going, we keep having these arguments, and so we just kind of break it down and talk about it, and we just get from them, we just elicit the information from them. Well, tell me all the ways that you've thought about it, and what's holding you back from making certain decisions, right? And the brain is a tricky thing. I mean, it has a way of of creating thoughts and like this infrastructure of thinking that kind of reinforces certain patterns of behavior, if that makes sense, right? And so like the brain is really, it's a wonderful, amazing thing, but it's also really good at allowing people to avoid the things that they should do, and avoid the things that they have to do. And that's kind of what therapy is really about, right? It's not my job to say that's something you have to do. It's about you discovering like, oh, this is something I know I have to do because of my own values and who I want to be as a person. And that's where the liberation comes from, and why it's so valuable. It's really about becoming more familiar with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the Fatherhood Program, that offers therapy. Are there other sessions, other, I guess, services that offer therapy as well? Or what other services are there?
At the agency, you mean, or in the Fatherhood Program?
I get in the agency.
Yeah, well, we have a pretty wide swath of different kinds of services that we offer. So one of our bigger programs is called the PHASE program, and that's a program for kids to get therapy. And so we have therapists in Galveston Independent School District and several other schools where the therapist is located on campus. And so if a kid is struggling with something, right, the parent or the teacher identifies like, oh, it looks like he's down a lot, they can come talk to one of our therapists. It's all free, and they can get seen right there in the school. And so we have that program. We've got Fatherhood. We've got a program called VOCO, which is about people who've been the victims of crimes, who can come see us. And so the wide majority of the people who come to Family Service Center are being seen at no charge. And that's a really important thing because, frankly, therapy is really expensive. I mean, you're talking about like a real expertise that somebody's offering. And if you're going to go out in, the real world and just seek it, you could be paying $100, $200 a session. And people pay that money because therapy is effective and it works, right? And so being able to offer therapy at no cost to people is just an incredible resource. And I'm really proud to work for an agency that prioritizes seeing people who couldn't necessarily afford therapy but could benefit from it.
So how does Family Service Center get funding?
Through a variety of sources. So we have a gala every year where we raise money, and then also like through state agencies. And so the Department of Health and Human Services Prevention and Early Intervention Division is what funds Fatherhood and the PHASE program. And so really it kind of comes from the state or from the government saying, like, we know that these services are important for people, and so let's put some money to make sure they get them.
So if somebody wants to get involved, there's ways for them to support. Maybe if they can't support financially, is there other ways that they can get involved?
Absolutely, yeah. We have a pretty robust like volunteer wing, and so if anybody ever wants to help support us, we're kind of always out, trying to spread the word about our services. So there's all kinds of stuff people can do if they want to get involved.
And specifically for the Fatherhood Program also, we can do a group with like a different agency or like a church, or if there's a group of men in a setting that is interested in doing the 24/7 dad fatherhood, we can do a group specifically with them as well. The Family Service Center just really wants to work with people where they're at and what works best for them, and so that's something we're working towards.
Is that a curriculum book for the Fatherhood Program?
Yes, it is.
Can I see it?
Yeah.
Sure, okay. So, going through this, what kind of, I guess, material is in here? I'm going to flip through while you
Yeah,
talk
absolutely, sure. It's a 12-week program or 12 sessions, and so sometimes people do it, once a week. Sometimes they'll do like a big thing on a weekend where they do like the whole course. The one we offer is once a week, and so each session is divided into some kind of a topic, right? So one of them is discipline, and so the theme of that session is basically just discipline. So we kind of offer some information up front. And so a lot of the program is really about getting from dads like what their thoughts are, right? And so like that discipline section will open up with like, okay, what do you guys think discipline means? What's your experience? Like, what did your dad do discipline-wise? Like, what of that do you think was good or not good, right? And then they'll share, and we'll have a conversation about it and just get a temperature of like, okay, where are we at with discipline? Then we'll present some information like, here's what discipline actually technically is, right? And so in the case of discipline is about teaching, right? People think of discipline like as punishment, right? Discipline is about punishment, and that's the crucial thing. Like, discipline is really about balancing different kinds of feedback for your kid. It's about teaching them. And so, for example, like when your kid makes a mistake, right, parents think like, uh-oh, something's wrong. But that's kind of the totally the wrong way to think about it, right? Kids are kids. Part of that is they're growing up. Making mistakes is an inherent part of being a child, right? And your job as a parent is to help them learn from those mistakes, right? But often parents, they see the kid make a mistake and then they think like something's wrong, I got to punish you, like something's not right, not realizing that like kids make mistakes, right? And a mistake is an opportunity to get better for the next time. And that's really what you want to maximize as a parent. Like, okay, you made this mistake. How can we make it so it's less likely you'll do it later? And that's really the key of it. And usually it has a lot more to do with adding praise and like building the relationship with the kid, as opposed to just like coming down with a harsh punishment. But I think often parents, when they feel frustrated in their own lives or feel, they've had a long day at work, they get home, the kid made a mistake, okay, now I got to punish you, right? And then and that's kind of where their brain's at. They're operating from this place of anger, as opposed to like, I'm your teacher essentially, and I'm guiding you through life.
Yeah, I found myself in that situation. Like if I'm in a rush or we got to be somewhere, and it's okay if they spilled their drink, but if you're like out the door and the drink spills, it's really, I guess, my issue that I'm dealing with,
right?
Because I'm like in a hurry or whatever, and so then I may be like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Oh, clean that up. Come on, get in the car or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I use this analogy sometimes, or this situation, like, you're at work all day, your boss is yelling at you, you're stressed out, right? You get home, and then the first thing that happens is like you take your shoes off and you step on a Lego, right? And it's like you've got all this anger from your day built up in you. It's like begging to go somewhere, but you couldn't do it at work because you don't want to get fired. But then, you told your kid not to play with the Legos and leave them out, but they did, right? And so suddenly all that anger floods into your relationship with your kid, right? Like, I told you not to put these Legos on the floor. And you feel justified in the moment, and in a way you are justified because technically it's a rule that they didn't follow, right? But the execution of it is a mistake. And so a lot of times for dads, I think it's about, and the program talks about this a lot, it's really about self-awareness, right? And so if you're frustrated and you're annoyed, when you get home, right, to just realize like, okay, a lot of this anger is probably not coming from the Lego situation, right? And there might be part of this that feels good, right? Releasing anger feels good. That's why people do it, because that's energy that has to go somewhere. And so there's kind of this motivation to release anger. And like, once you identify like, oh, here's this problem that I can feel justified in releasing my anger on, it feels good to let it out. But the problem is that people usually over punish in that situation. You're damaging your relationship with your kid. You're not actually making them better at not cleaning up the Legos. And so it really becomes more about the dad than it does about the kid, if that makes sense, right? And so one of the core skills that I talk about a lot is like delaying punishment, right? Because when you're in that elevated state where you're angry, the likelihood that you're going to make a mistake is much higher. So either you're going to set a punishment that you yourself can't reinforce, and then the kid is going to realize like, oh, dad doesn't do what he says, or it's going to be a punishment that's too big and you do enforce it, and the kid's like, oh, dad's a dictator. Like, I don't care what this guy thinks. Like, his rules are unreasonable. And so giving yourself that time to calm down, right? Like, okay, you left a Lego on the floor. I'm going to think about this for a little while. And then once you're in a calm state, then really reevaluating and be like, okay, how big was this problem? Well, not very big. Like, what's the punishment? Probably almost nothing.
Yeah. So just, I guess, that self-awareness.
Yeah.
Realizing that you're stressed or you're in a rush or there's something else going on, you're already on edge a little bit, and then not immediately blaring out a punishment or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And like dads, like anybody, like we're kind of we're like puppets, and our emotions are constantly driving our behaviors. You know what I mean? And so, and that's unfortunate. It doesn't mean that somebody's weak. I mean, everybody is like that. I'm like that. And so part of like the program and what I do in therapy is just really, emphasizing the idea of getting really familiar with your own emotions and kind of what drives you, right? And like, when do you make good decisions? When do you make bad decisions? And specifically with parenting, like, how are you maximizing your position as a parent, your role as a parent to be most effective? That's really ultimately what it's about, is like, what works and how can we make you work better as a father, as far as like getting the outcomes you want from your kids, right? It's really practical in the sense that like, when you have a bad relationship with your kid, it can make everything difficult, everything you're trying to do as a parent difficult, and that adds to your overall stress. And so it kind of can become this snowball rolling down a hill, where it's just like the stress you get from parenting is going back into the relationship, which makes the relationship more difficult, which means there's more negative input. And so that's really what, it's a lot about kind of cycles of behavior and habits you have as a parent. And so if you can really maximize what you're doing and focus on the important stuff as a parent, the outcomes are just way better, not just for your kid, but for you.
What are ways to practice? Are there tools that you can use to be self-aware? Because it's not natural. I wouldn't say you have to be do it on purpose, like be self-aware of yourself.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, frankly, that's kind of where therapy or this class comes in. I mean, it's everybody believes themselves to be pretty self-aware on some level because they're thinking about their own lives a lot, right? And so everybody is self-aware to some extent. But as I was talking about earlier, like the brain has ways of kind of fooling you into thinking like, okay, I hold this view, you can justify certain behaviors by saying, okay, I'm doing that because of this, even if that's not necessarily the case. And so self-awareness, some of it is just spending time doing it and being willing to look at your own flaws, but having somebody else with you to do that just makes it way easier, right? Because just the process of telling somebody about like, okay, you had an issue with your kid. What happened? Okay, that happened. Why did you do that? Well, I was thinking that because of this, because I have this specific belief, right? And then we really look at like, okay, did this work out the way that you thought it would? And if it didn't, how do you think you could have done it better? And so it's way more easy, I think, to gain self-awareness in the context of therapy or a class like that. But I think it's also something somebody can do on their own. It just takes a lot of discipline.
Mm-hmm. About the Fatherhood Program, is there anything else that you would like to share? Because I know we were talking about therapy and we talked about the workbook, but is there other things that we haven't talked about, aspects of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think aside from the services that we're offering, I really think of our job as being as kind of messengers about the importance of father involvement. Like the way our culture works, I feel like there is this sense that like mothers are vital and dads are useful, not vital.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, it's good to have a dad, but what the research tells us is that it's just overwhelmingly true that when you have a father or a father figure involved, it doesn't have to be like bio dad. It can just be, mom's boyfriend or a grandfather or somebody. If a kid has a male figure who's involved in their life, the outcome of their life situations just tend to be way better. So for example, like a girl that's raised without a father is 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teenager than one who is raised with a father, right? Or like kids who are raised without dads are more likely to be obese, are more likely to live in poverty, are more likely to go to prison. So just across the board, the outcomes for kids are just way more positive if you have some kind of male figure involved in their lives. And so that's really kind of part of the message that we want to spread, is really like, if you have no interest in us or our program, just know that as a father, you're vitally important to your children, and any amount of involvement that you can have with them is better than less, right? And often I think in our society now, there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens, especially like when moms and dads aren't together anymore, and there's a bunch of like negative vibes in that relationship. It kind of spills over into the kids, and that's kind of a real tragedy, because whether you're with the mother of your children or not, you still have a vital role to play in those kids' lives, and it's kind of really important that you overcome those barriers, often which are relational with the mom, to be present in your kids' lives, right? But the messages, I feel like a lot of messages in our society are really like, dad's not that important, right? Like maybe they're better off without me, stuff like that. And part of what we're here to say is like, no, you're vitally important to your child.
I'm guessing some of the gentlemen who go through the Fatherhood Program who are welcome to, maybe they are separated and they want to know, hey, what's the best way for me to be that father that my kids need, even though I'm not there 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a lot of dads like that. And there's a section in the course that's about co-parenting, and that's all about kind of maximizing that relationship and figuring out how do you overcome those borders, right? Like if things are really contentious with the mother of your kids, how do you overcome that? Like where should you be putting your effort? Things like that.
All right. Shanice, is there anything else you'd like to share about the Fatherhood Program?
I just think it's super important. One thing I forgot to mention, I did my student internship for my clinical mental health counseling at Family Service Center. And so I was seeing children for therapy. And just the kids, they can't control their lives. They're children. They're under their parents' care. And so a lot of it, if the parents would take care of their needs, that like their mental health needs, then it would help trickle down to their kids. So if a father or father figure is out there and thinks that their child is having a problem, maybe some things need to be looked at like parent-wise. And so I just think my big thing is that having a strong parent and just having a strong foundation is great for your children. And sometimes I feel like parents think that I'm not a parent, so I don't feel I can. I'm not an expert. I want to say that clearly. But just you can always better yourself. Everyone can, or just learn more about who they are and how they can work better with themselves so that they can be better for other people and just succeed in their life. And so my big thing is just therapy is for everyone. You're not going to be judged. Fathers and father figures, it's there for you. And so that if you are working on yourself, you'll be able to be there better for the people in your lives.
Does it take us, are there specific qualities that it takes to become a therapist, y'all would say? Things that you have to have?
I think for me, what I think is super important is just a deep curiosity about people and their lives and how they think about the world. And that's something I think that if you've got a lot of that, you would probably make a good therapist, because you've just got to be really clued into how somebody operates and how they think. And I think also just, being kind of altruistic, I think, is important, like caring about people getting better and thinking that has a lot of value. I think those are important. Shanice, anything I'm leaving out?
I think in a therapist, non-judgmental. I mean, everyone has a lived experience. And just not being judgmental, but being curious and wanting to learn about that person and their experiences. And also, being able to feel how the other person will respond and what works best for their needs. And so, when I was working with kids, just playing games and having fun with them. Because a lot of kids, that was the only time that they were actually able to express themselves was through play. And so they were able to be who they were, and so that allowed them to open up more and really see who they were inside. And so I think a therapist just has to be someone that is open to other people.
Yeah, and I think somebody that just feels relatable. I mean, that's one of the biggest predictors of therapy being successful. The first piece of it is does the person actually want to change? That's the most important factor. But after that, it's really about the relationship with the therapist, right? And so if you go in there and you're talking to somebody and you feel comfortable and you feel like they know what they're talking about, that's a really good sign. And conversely, if you go into a therapy session and you feel like you feel slightly uncomfortable or weird, it's almost definitely not going to work. So the relationship you have with that individual person is vital. And if it's comfortable and you feel good about it, it's very likely to work.
And that is something that keeps people from therapy, is feeling that the other person, they won't be able to relate to them. And so that's something that therapy is needing to do, is diversify so that more people from more walks of life are providing therapy services. So more Black therapists, more Hispanic therapists, more Spanish-speaking therapists, Asian therapists, different therapists from different religious backgrounds, just so that more people feel like, hey, there's someone that I can relate to.
Yeah.
And looks like me, has kind of similar experiences to me. That will make them feel more accepted and like they're in a space that is for them.
You probably want someone that you feel like, hey, I could be friends with this person. In real life, if we ran into each other, we would probably be friends or something like that, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's not exactly a friendship, but there's elements of friendship that are very similar in therapy, and so you're getting positive reinforcement and kind of have your back. But I think unlike a friend, right, a friend has kind of specific motivations of their own, right? They want you to like them. They might have their own ideas about what you should do, and it may or may not have to do with what's best for you. And so that's the good thing about a therapist, is that it's somebody who's totally removed from your life. And so you don't owe them anything. They don't think about you in any specific way coming in. And so you're kind of starting over. And just to piggyback off of what Shanice said, male therapists, I think, are also vital, especially in the Fatherhood Program, because an overwhelming number of percentage of therapists are women, which is a great thing, but also it's unfortunate for men, because I think often men, especially if they're having problems with women, the idea of going in and talking to another woman about those problems feels like, oh, I'm talking to somebody on the other team who might not understand what I'm going through.
So whenever you were sharing that information, the thing that came through my head was, once I've only gotten a massage one time in my life. It was the most uncomfortable thing in my life, and my wife was there. She was like, I want to do this couples massage. I was like, all right, cool. I'll do it for you. I've never really wanted to go get a massage before, and so it was the most awkward thing ever. I was like, this is the worst experience of my life. I wasn't comfortable. I was like, but maybe if it was someone else. It was this lady, and I don't even remember, but I don't know. That's just what came to my mind. I was like, this was awkward. It was weird. I didn't like it. She was rubbing my hair and all this stuff, and I was like, what's going on?
And a therapist massages your insides, so you want to have someone that
you're comfortable with. I was like, I don't know what's going on. up there. That's just what came into my mind, so I figured I would share.
Yeah,
You brought it out of me.
Yeah.
You brought it out of me. Awesome. Is there anything else y'all would like to share about the agency or the Fatherhood Program? Remind everybody how they can find out more information or get involved?
Shanice?
Yeah, just that Family Service Center is here. We've been here for 108 years. It's therapy in Texas City and also on the mainland. And then for fatherhood specifically, it's free therapy for fathers and father figures in Galveston County. So you don't have to be a biological father. It can be your uncle. It can be your mom's boyfriend. It can be a big brother, perhaps, if you're a big brother and big brother's big sister. Anyone that is a male figure that is involved in a child's life, 0 to 17, they can get therapy. They can get the individual therapy. They can get family therapy. They can get couples therapy. And they also can get support from our 24/7 Dad group with other men in the community.
Yeah, and just for anybody who's listening who's part of some kind of an institution like a church or anything, like we're more than happy to bring the 24/7 Dad program to you, right? And so if you've got a group of dads who you think might be interested in just getting a little bit better and growing, we can bring it to you and offer it on site. And so, yeah, we're just really eager to get people involved.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much for joining today. I appreciate both of you.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
This is KHEA Radio 99.